What is up, my brothers and sisters, my agents of respect? It's your boy TreJuanJohnson back with another episode of the No Disrespect But podcast. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to comment. Just make sure you keep those comments respectful. And if you want to support your favorite podcast of yours truly, I'm actually going to put my Cash App in there. So, I'm not one of those people that's strapped for cash, but I like what I do. And if you guys love the content, and there's some things I want to do to start elevating the podcast a little bit more. So with your help, I think we can make no disrespect but podcast one of these premier sports podcasts in the nation. But um, appreciate you guys riding with me regardless. So, let's get it as high as we can. So then we get some sponsors in this thing, and they can pay for it, and they can allow me to give y'all free shit, right? But no, man, I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and look, had to be talking about what we're talking about today, which is, hey, we're halfway or a little bit more than halfway through the college football season. And look, as a Bama fan, it has not been great for me so far. Losses to the state of Tennessee, being Vanderbilt and the University of Tennessee most recently. I'm hoping those guys can find a way to win the next five, win out the rest of the season. Got a tough matchup against Mizzou and what they bring offensively and defensively. And obviously, we have LSU on the road, probably going to be a night game. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But there's still a lot for Alabama to play for, and we'll see what happens. But what I wanted to touch on was, if you guys remember, before the start of the college football season, more specifically the FBS season, um, excuse me, I made some predictions about conference champions, storylines, all that type of thing. So I want to, since we're a little bit more than halfway there, I want to revisit kind of some of those things that we talked about. So obviously, we were, one of the big stories was, how was Coach Saban going to be replaced by head coach Kalen DeBoer? And I think it's been an okay first year. I think we're still seeing some turnover in terms of the issues from last year with the penalties and just some lapses in judgment on both sides of the ball and even on special teams. Um, and one of the things we talked about was, would Kirby go on a run now? This was his moment. There is no Nick Saban. The only team that could beat him was Alabama, and you found yourself saying, is it Alabama or is it Nick Saban? Well, we found out earlier this year that it might just be the University of Alabama. Alabama got up to a 28 to nothing head start, ended up going down to the wire, unfortunately, uh, putting up my blood pressure, but Alabama was able to squeak out with a win. But the Dogs just went on the road in Austin, Texas, and just did what they wanted to do against the Texas Longhorns. I know the score ended up being like just a two-touchdown game, but I felt like Georgia left some meat on the bone, just like Alabama left some meat on the bone when they had played Georgia early in the year. And Georgia, to me, looked like the team, at least defensively, that you thought they would be coming into the year. Carson Beck has struggled with turnovers. I think he had two interceptions last game, no touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. But Travis Etienne had himself quite a day, the transfer from the University of Florida. But I think we still find ourselves saying, who's gonna be that guy who replaces Coach Saban. Ryan Day had a tough loss against Oregon, but Ohio State had been playing well. They played well in that game. I think if they have a few more seconds on the clock, they probably win that game. Brian Kelly is probably the guy with the head start right now. Yes, he has one loss, opening loss to USC and to start the year, but he's undefeated in the conference right now. And I think every matchup up to this point, he's shown to be the better coach, and they've had the coaching advantage. And they have a chance to run the table. They have A&M this upcoming weekend. Obviously, they have the home game against Alabama. I think they have Vandy this year too. I'm not sure, but they have a chance to run the table and find themselves in Atlanta playing for not just an SEC title, but a spot in the college football playoff, which they haven't had in the Brian Kelly era and haven't had since their national championship year in 2019. Coach Prime, Colorado has played better. They're noticeably better than they were a season ago. in all areas, especially defensively. Still having some issues kind of protecting Shador, but you've seen in recent games they've gotten their run game going. They're starting to get more of the wide receiver core involved. Shador's looking like just a conductor, just making everything move the way it's supposed to be going. And who knows? It's still a big question. Who's going to replace Saban? And again, regardless of what happens this year, it doesn't totally answer the question because who's going to have that level of dominance? But with the big bad boogeyman out of the way, I think all coaches, especially some of these younger guys, they're young in regards to their profession. They see it as their time to be the new Saban, to be the new standard of college football. And so that question has yet to be answered, but I do think there are some guys that are making some headway. I think Brian Kelly's noticeable. I think Dan Lanning is noticeable. I think Coach Signetti over Indiana, he's noticeable, even though he's more on the older end of coach. Um, but there's a lot to see now. So still remains to be seen. Now let's talk 12 teams playoff expansion. And we haven't gotten to there yet, right? But I will say this is one of those, this is where Trey was wrong because, or at least half wrong, because one of the things with the college football playoff is I believe it's still going to end up being an SEC Big Ten heavy gauntlet. And so I was like, why would you go to 12? It makes no sense. It's not creating parity in the sport. I think I was wrong there. And when I say where I'm wrong, I don't believe that some of these teams would beat some of our top teams in the SEC in the Big Ten, but I do think the conversations have a lot of parity in them, and this is what I mean. When's the last time we talked about Boise State? When have we talked about Army, Navy, UNLV with an opportunity to get to a playoff and have a shot at a national title? Um, in the four playoff team era, that wasn't happening. In the BCS era, there wasn't really happening. Yeah, we had the outliers like Boise State, West Virginia, and all those things, but we always knew it would come down to strength of schedule, and those guys never had it. And what we're seeing now with this landscape of college football, they're playing these guys. They're going to play the big boys, and they're performing well. Boise State almost knocked off Oregon. UNLV had a tough loss against Syracuse on the road, so they're playing some of these big games. And I think UNLV has a win over a Big 12 team, if I'm not mistaken. Can't recall right now, but we're talking about them in the heart of the season. I mean, we've covered Boise State, we've covered UNLV. We've seen what Army and Navy are doing, both undefeated for the first time, I think, since like around World War II. So it's incredible the fact that we can now highlight these programs in years that they weren't. Does that mean that they're going to just go on a run and have a championship, especially in the next year or two? Probably not. But it's any given day. You never know what can happen in a game of football. I never thought I'd live to see the day that Vanderbilt beat Alabama, but hell, it happened. And so can Boise State, who has arguably the best player in the country right now in Aston Genty, can they run the table? We know what he can do. The guy is dominant. The guy has like 600 yards after contact or something like that, which I think would rank him third. If we just use his yards after contact, that would land him third in rushing in the nation. The guy's incredible. UNLV had that, hiccup with their starting quarterback to begin the year, and then their backup quarterback came in, and it feels like they haven't missed a beat. And that's one of the most exciting games coming up: UNLV versus Boise State. That's a meaningful game now because it has playoff implications. And so I can be a man and say, "Hey, I had it all wrong. I just was thinking on the surface level of okay, like, well, do I expect these teams to beat SEC, Big Ten? No, I don't. Do I expect SEC, Big Ten teams to be left out for a team in the MAC or something like that, or Conference USA? I still don't. But where I fell short, I didn't see the bigger picture, and that's the light being is it shown, whatever, on these programs that in previous years didn't get that love, and now they can, and now they have something to play for. They have an opportunity now to say, "Hey, I can truly be a national champion if I get in and I get somebody on the right day, and it happens to be my day. So that's really cool, and I'm almost looking forward now to seeing how what happens if the Naval Academy, because I'm never going to say the Army, go Navy, be Army. That's what we do around here. Um, what if they make it? Like, what happens? Like, it's crazy. I want to see that. So I'm pulling. I know everybody's looking for Aston Genty and Boise State and everything. I'm pulling for Navy to somehow make it to the college football playoff because I want to see teams have to defend that option. I just hope it ain't Alabama having defended. Although I hope Alabama makes the college football playoff, and we will talk about that in a second. But speaking of guys like Aston Genty, we early on before the season started, I kind of pointed out, who's going to be the best player in college football, who's going to take that mantle. I mentioned names like Carson Beck, Dylan Gabriel, Luther Burden III, Jalen Milrow, Ollie Gordon, Harold Perkins, James Pierce, and Travis Hunter. Um, I did not put a Curtis Rourke. I did not put an Ashton Genty. Um, I did not put a Ricky White out of UNLV, maybe when I should have. And that's what this season is about, right? That's why you play the games. Maybe I should have put a Whit Weeks in there. Maybe I should have put a Gary Nussmeier and guys like that who are performing well for their respective teams. But it's crazy. I mean, Carson Beck hasn't really looked like a bona fide number one overall pick. Dylan Gabriel still has his limitations, but it still looked like Dylan Gabriel that we know and love. Luther Burden has still been phenomenal. Jalen Milrow having a tough stretch over these last three games. Ollie Gordon just got his motors going against BYU a few days ago. Harold Perkins out for the year. James Pierce performing well for Tennessee. Travis Hunter, obviously a guy in the Heisman conversation. Now you can throw a Shador Sanders in there. That was somebody I didn't have originally named, but Shador is making a name for himself and being a guy that you can rely on in all types of situations. And I think this is much like that. Who's going to replace Coach Saban? I think who would be the best player in college football remains to be seen. But in my humble opinion, I believe Travis Hunter and Aston Genty are beginning to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. So that's just my opinion on it. Now, I don't want to go to this part because this is where I have to consistently say I'm wrong. And I don't really like that. I like being right. I like being right. There's nothing wrong with being wrong sometimes, but like whoever wants to be wrong, not this guy. Some in my household would say I'm always wrong and they're right, but we're not gonna get there. Anyways, she probably heard me. She's probably gonna come in here. Anyways, before I get in trouble, I talked about my conference championship predictions, and I started with the Power Four. Um, and I didn't even mention the Group of Five, and that's going to freaking change. I can tell you that right now. That's about to change. So, um, let's go. Big Ten. I had USC, Southern Cal, winning the conference. Haven't even won a conference game yet, guys. They blew like a 20-something point lead to Maryland. They were up 20-6 the previous week. Like it's insane. I thought a lot was right on the season for Lincoln Riley. I thought, he was going to make some things happen. I thought Miller Moss, who has shown and still has shown that he's a capable quarterback. I just think Lincoln's game plan and refusing to run the ball has hindered this team from being successful. And I always felt like he did well with under radar quarterbacks. And again, I think Miller Moss is having a really good season, but sometimes you have to game plan effectively. And they just haven't run the ball to close out games, and they've allowed teams to get back into the game, and they haven't finished games the way they want. And so I'm going to make a new prediction if that's okay with you guys. Is it okay with you guys if I make a new prediction? Because I was wrong about USC. And so what I will say is my new Big Ten champ, if I had to guess, and I will say who I think will be in the championship game. I believe the Big Ten championship will be Oregon versus Ohio State. And I believe that the Ohio State will win that game and win the conference championship. So um, we're gonna go there. Let me. I'm writing my notes as we go, y'all, because I'm that type of person. So Big Ten champ. We're gonna go Ohio State over Oregon. All right. Big 12. Boy, was I wrong on this one. I was going back and forth between Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Even thought about um, Utah coming in. Utah was a viable option, but Cam Rising being injured, I think that dream is over. And I had Oklahoma State winning this. I thought, Alec Gordon was one of the better players in college football. They're returning their whole offensive line, returning their starting quarterback, who has since been benched, by the way. Um, they just haven't shown up. They've just been bad, and they've been in games. They've had opportunities to win, and they just haven't closed the deal. And where I am right now, I just have no faith in Oklahoma State, and I'm gonna go with a team which is now going to be my new surprising team is my Fighting Mormons of Brigham Young University, undefeated, undefeated. Who would have thought? Oh, little Brigham Young. Oh, let them bring him young. Undefeated. Playing lights out. Quarterback has been amazing. Running game has been amazing. That defense and their ability to take over is insane. And I know guys and I know podcasters are saying, hey, they can't keep winning this way. You know, all these turnovers and things like that. But they keep finding a way to do it. They should have lost against Oklahoma State. Like Ollie Gordon had his get right game versus them, had I think 3 or 4 touchdowns, and BYU just comes down and scores a touchdown with I think 17 seconds left or something like that. With by the hands of a quarterback that's not really known for being that good throwing the ball. I think he had 3 interceptions in that game. But it's something in the water down in Provo, Utah, baby. And so my Big 12 champ, I will go my Fighting Mormons of Brigham Young. I will take them. Y'all about to kill me. Already they kill me. I will take them over the University of Colorado. I like what Coach Prime is doing. I think those guys are finding their groove, especially in the Big 12, and I think they will parlay themselves into a conference championship game. I know a lot of people are thinking Kansas State may make it back there, and I can see that too. But right now, I got BYU there for sure, and I got Colorado squeaking in. Obviously, I can still see Kansas State making it, but either way, I have BYU as your Big 12 champs. Okay. ACC, I feel real good about that. Let me see. I had Clemson, and I'm still picking Clemson. And I'm picking Clemson over the U. I like what Miami's doing with Cam Ward. Um, I still think he gets tricked by some defense sometimes. I think Clemson's come a long way from the beatdown they got at the hands of UGA. Um, but it is what it is. Um, I I think Clemson has played consistently better, if that makes sense. I think their quarterback is taking care of the ball. I think they found their run game. I think their defense is playing lights out right now, and I just feel more confident in Clemson. Um, I don't know. I just feel like that UGA game did something to them, and I'm confident in that. So we're going to go Clemson over Miami. I still feel really good about that pick. Oh Lord, now let's go to the SEC. Okay, SEC, I picked Bama. Even better, even more so. My bold prediction was that Alabama would have an undefeated season. Well, scratch that shit. We lost to the state of Tennessee, so that's not happening. But we begin to ask ourselves, Do they still have a shot at Atlanta? I know everybody's trying to figure out if they have a shot at the playoff right now, and that's still a long shot in itself. But I think right now we're looking at, do they have a shot at Atlanta? They sit now with two conference losses. LSU and Texas A&M have zero losses. They're playing each other this weekend. Texas has one loss. UGA has one loss. Um, Tennessee has one loss, I believe. Then you obviously have Ole Miss with two losses. And I think those are the ones that really matter in the grand scheme of things. I think only has one loss in conference, if I'm not mistaken. So you're looking at that too. And there's a lot of games to be had. I think Mizzou only has one conference loss, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really crazy right now. Um, and so it's while everybody's thinking about the playoff, I think it's even more important to think about who's going to make that mad dash towards Atlanta. I'm going to say this. I still have all the faith in Alabama. I have the faith they will finish 5-0 with their remaining 5 games. So that would put them at 6-2 in conference. Um, UGA doesn't really have many tough games left. Texas doesn't have a lot of tough games left. Tennessee has a couple tough games. But I will say this, and I said this after the game earlier in the season. I felt that Alabama and UGA would see each other again in Atlanta. I also got a feeling that based from a schedule standpoint, that Texas and UGA may see each other again in Atlanta. But I'll say this. I think UGA is playing like they'll see Alabama again. And I think and I hope that Alabama wants to be in Atlanta this year and knows they still have that to play for. And I think and a lot of the SEC teams, they play each other. Like Alabama has to play LSU. Um, Texas has to play Texas A&M. You know, Georgia has to play Ole Miss. Like so that could have they have to play Tennessee. Tennessee has to play UGA. So it's a lot of crazy things that can happen. Florida's still in the mix. Vandy's still in the mix in terms of playing spoiler. Vandy is in the mix of getting to Atlanta their damn selves. But here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go UGA gets there. I think UGA runs the table. I think they're probably the best coach team in the conference. I think UGA runs the table. They get to Atlanta, and I believe some things happen where Alabama is one of many SEC teams with 2 losses. And you look at their losses, you look at their opponents. I think you end up seeing Vandy being maybe a 3-loss team in the conference. Obviously, Tennessee may be a 3-loss team in the conference. And you say, you know what? They lost on the road. Definitely shouldn't have lost to Vandy, but Vandy's a ranked team now. Played well enough to win against Tennessee. 2 1-possession game losses. I think combined 12 points, if I'm not mistaken. I think they end up with the record differential. I think they end up with the tiebreakers. And I think Bama gets in there. And I have Bama because I believe UGA has a Bama problem. And I have Bama beating UGA in Atlanta for the SEC championship. I'm confident there, and I'm going to stick with that. Now, I'm going to add something that I didn't add before at the beginning was a group of 5 champ. I believe that UNLV and Boise State, I think they're going to hurt each other's cause. I just feel that way. I think they're going to hurt each other's cause. I believe that How I want to say this. I believe that Army and Navy maybe have favorable schedules. Now they don't have the um how should I say this, the scheduled advantages that maybe a Boise State has, or even a UNLV. And it's more than likely that the championship out of that conference is going to make it. But something tells me I just want to go with a I just want to go with a military academy. Can I do that? Can I be different? I feel like everybody's picking either Boise State or UNLV to make it. And I really want the Navy to do it. My grandfather served in the Navy. I want the Navy to have a chance at a national title. And so that's what I'm going to go with. Navy as your highest group of five champion. Now, I want to go back into some of my other predictions before I get into my 12 team playoff and who I think will be the 12 when it's all said and done. So bear with me. One of my predictions, I talked about the most surprising team in a good way. That was going to be Florida. I knew they had one of the toughest schedules in FBS. Felt like it was a make or break year for Billy Napier. They were projected to win 5 games. I said I felt like they would get 7 in a bowl win. So like they have 6 to be bowl eligible and a 7 win once and win the bowl game. And here's the thing, they haven't looked terrible. This whole 2 quarterback system thing with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway was kind of working. It kept them in games. They just weren't pulling it off. And Graham Mertz, unfortunately, out for the year. It's DJ Lagway's show, and I think now him being the guy, he's showing some flashes with his arm and with his feet. I can see Florida being a spoiler for certain people in the SEC towards the end of the year, and again getting themselves to 6 wins to get a bowl and get a 7 win in the bowl game, and Billy Napier gets another year. So I can see that happening. So I'm not totally wrong there. I still think it'd be our most surprising team. Um, Most disappointing team I predicted would be Texas. Now you can use semantics and say, well, if they don't win the SEC and they don't win the national championship, then they're technically disappointing. That's not what I meant. I felt like they were going to get a crash course in SEC football, and that hasn't quite happened. I mean, yes, it happened against UGA, but that's UGA. Okay, but like they handled Mississippi State. Who else did they play? Like they've been okay. They have Auburn coming through, I believe, later on in the year. They kind of got the easy um, gauntlet from on a paper standpoint of the SEC, but they definitely haven't been disappointed by any stretch of imagination. Now, some of the things I mentioned that might be wrong was the injuries in the backfield. Thought that might hinder them. Their backfield looks great. Um, Talked about them losing a lot of talent defensively. It doesn't matter. The defense is still great. But where old Trey, your self-proclaimed sports guru felt a little something was this whole quarterback situation. Quinn Ewers gets hurt like he always does, which is why I feel like NFL GM should beware. Arch Manning comes in, plays well for 2 or 3 games. They do a tune-up, the previous week versus Mississippi State, I believe, with Quinn Ewers. Plays okay. Then he gets shell shot versus UGA to the point where Arch Manning comes in. He doesn't do that much better. But they end up going back to Quinn. He plays better in the second half. They say he's getting all the first team reps like normal. He's going to be fine. But if old Sark has to pull you again, I don't think he's going to get back in. And then now you're putting a young Arch Manning in a situation that maybe he wasn't supposed to be in this early in his career. So still a factor. I'm still right there. Both predictions I already talked about. Alabama's not going undefeated. It's okay. You guys can laugh at me. It's fine. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Now, where I have been great, okay, is that I predicted that a non-quarterback would win the Heisman. And right now, Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter, Ashton being a running back, Travis being a cornerback and a wide receiver, they are your 2 leading candidates for the Heisman Trophy. Cam Ward's right behind them. But I feel really, really good. I told y'all coming in, I felt really, really good. Now I had guys like Luther Burden the third, Tez Johnson. I did have Travis Hunter. Had guys like Ollie Gordon, Harold Perkins for the defensive guys in the room, and Donovan Edwards. But Aston Genty again, looking like Michael Myers, just came in on the scene and said, hey, partner, don't forget about me. And sir, I will never forget about you again. And words of my boy Logan, he may be a saint. He may be a saint. And if he's a saint, we are all better for it. But that's really neat. I hope that a non-quarterback wins this year because I feel like the non-quarterbacks have played better. I think the quarterbacks that we all had high, the Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milrows, they've been iffy. Cam Ward's been good, but I wouldn't say great. I mean, I don't think Heisman season, maybe based on the team's record and stuff like that. But Travis Hunter, Aston Genty, those are your two front runners for the Heisman as far as I'm concerned. Now, one that's probably still off the table, I think, is that I said Tulane would make the semis of the college football playoff. I don't even know if they're going to win their conference now, so that's off the table. I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. But I did predict that four SEC teams will make the college football playoff, including a three-loss team. Who's going to be that three-loss team? Who knows? Who knows? But it's possible. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna stick with that, but I do think it's still a possibility that four SEC teams will make the college football playoff. Which, speaking of perfect segue, let's look at let's talk about Trey's college football playoff predictions. College football playoff bracket. So I think your overall one seed. So let's talk about it. I had um I think your overall one seed will be Ohio State. I think Ohio State is going to be your overall one. So Ohio State. I think your two seed will be Bama. I think your three seed will be Clemson. And your four seed will be BYU. And your five seed will be Navy. Now, this is where it gets dicey, okay? I think your six seed is Oregon. I think your seven seed is UGA. I think your eight seed is Miami because I'm thinking Miami either gets to the ACC championship undefeated or with one loss. That's kind of how I view it. So, um, eight seed Miami. Um, go nine seed. So I got a 9, a 10, 11, and a 12. Okay. Oh, and I said Navy the fifth seed. I'm sorry. Um, Fuck it. Now I gotta start all over again. Sorry. One seed, Ohio State. Two seed, Bama. Three seed, Clemson. Four seed, BYU. Five seed, Oregon. Six seed, UGA. Seven seed, Miami. I think your eight seed ends up being LSU. I think your nine seed. I think your nine seed ends up being a team like Penn State. I think your 10 seed is Texas. So got my four SEC teams in there. 11 seed, I think ends up being. I don't think it ends up being Notre Dame. Um, I could see them getting in, but I just don't see it right now. Um, hmm, what should I put? I'm going on a limb, and I'm going to say I'm going to say Indiana gets in there, and then 12 seed Navy. Okay, so the way that works is your four teams are on a bye. We about to do this all the way through. Okay, so you got 5 Oregon versus 12 Navy. You have sorry 6 UGA versus 11 Indiana. I think is how it's formatted. Um, yep, you have 7 Miami versus 10 Texas, and then you have 8 LSU versus 9 Penn State. Okay, so I'm gonna take Oregon over Navy. I will take UGA over Indiana. I will take Texas over Miami, and I will take LSU over Penn State. We got it. So I'm trying to think of the bracket. So okay. No, we're gonna look at this. Y'all bear with me. Okay. So from what it looks like, it says number one is over the 8-9 winner. So you're gonna have one Ohio State versus 8 LSU. You would have Bama versus Texas. Hmm. You would have Clemson versus UGA, and then you would have BYU versus Oregon. Now, I'm gonna take I'll take LSU over Ohio State. I'll take Bama over Texas. I'll take Clemson over UGA. I'll take Oregon over BYU. And then I believe that puts Bama versus LSU in the semi and Oregon versus Clemson in a semi. And I think you have Bama versus Oregon in the Natty. I got Bama over Oregon. So sorry I had to do it all like that and had to do all a little slow math. But there it is. Based on my bracket, my predictive bracket, I have Bama going up against Oregon in the national title game. And I got Kalen DeBoer keeping his streak against old Dan Lanning alive. Roll Tide. We will revisit this after after I guess the end of the season. Um and we will look at where we are going into the conference championships if we're close. And then we'll do a final run through with the final playoff bracket, obviously, and kind of do it the same way. And we'll go from there and then pick a national champion based off of that. And I'll let you know if Bama is in that number. Guess who I'm picking to be the national championship or champions? You got it, Alabama, baby. But look, I'm interested at this point in the season, just to hear y'all's 12. Just list down your 12. Doesn't even have to be in order. Just list who your 12 playoff teams will be. And we can go from there. We can start talking about order and all that type of stuff the closer we get. But I'm interested. So make sure you guys drop it in your comments. When I post this on Twitter, make sure you comment at Future NBA Gov. That's my personal one, or comment on the podcast at Bud Disrespect. But really interested to see what everybody's 12, what they're predicting their 12 may be. Anyways, if there's anything I say that offended anyone, that's a good thing, right? It's an opportunity for me to learn. It's an opportunity for you to teach me. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Peace.